Hello, everyone, and happy Monday. Welcome back for another AlphaNooner. We are very excited to welcome for the first time William Breakell, CEO and founder of Lazy Susan. Of course, we are often very focused on all things cannabis related. Normally that's focused on sort of the flower edible element, but this one's a little bit different. It's more focused on everything else, kind of the fun things and accessories that make it possible. Of course, like rolling papers, trays, and of course, for this one, Lazy Susans or Blazy Susans. So I want to start by saying thanks for joining, Will. Also apologize for not wearing pink, although you didn't either, which I'm shocked. Every time I've seen you in the past, you've been wearing pink. You're all branded out and decked out.
So I'm actually here. Let's see.
You got to
It's
do
not
this.
blurring, but we've got a new black line rice paper where I'm jumping ahead, but it's a pleasure to be here, Mackenzie. Great to see you again. Yeah, thanks for having me.
Anytime. All right. Well, I will also mention anyone who's out there, one, also thanks for joining. And two, of course, if you've got any questions, comments, you want to throw them in the chat, you're also welcome to do that. I see some people are ready. Hey, great to see you guys. But I think, I've met you a ton of times in person. I think probably people are familiar with seeing your products on shelves and things like that when they're shopping, but I don't know if everyone knows the story behind it. So since it's kind of your first time on, I think it's kind of a great time to take the time to start with your story, how you got into cannabis and kind of how Blazy Susan came to be.
Yeah, absolutely. So Blazy Susan really just started as a kind of a crazy concept of, what do the other stoners out there look like, and kind of, why does everyone have to be lumped into this messy, disorganized, cluttered kind of stereotype? So the idea was really born out of Colorado, originally from Virginia. Ended up actually being at a military college called Virginia Military Institute, which is like one of the oldest senior military academies in the U.S., majored in economics and business. And so, through that period, being a consumer and also being drug tested, I got into the industry the only way I knew how, which was trading penny stocks back in 2013. And so it took me on this long road, of also, fortune and then loss, as most people know that we're in the 2013 kind of industry, that, we got in the space and saw a lot of really crazy things happening in the ancillary side and the vape side. I saw people going public with, a bedazzled vape, back in 2013 at the original Denver Pot Stock Conference. And, from there kind of lost my fortune as an investor. So ended up moving out to Colorado to work in finance as a prop trader, and was trading futures. And so kind of when I first moved out to Denver, I moved in with like 4 other roommates, being a recent graduate as I was. And so I basically had this opportunity to see how messy these guys were, living in this house. And it was like, the bongs and the dab rigs and just every possible thing. And so coming from Virginia and very limited, legal market, it's sort of like coming to Narnia if you liked weed, right? It's like this very, oh, wow, I've only seen this in pictures or online and all these things are here. And then I realized that, man, they really needed something to clean it up. And so that was actually a high moment for me where I was stoned and I was thinking about my military school, and I'm like, man, we had to have everything organized by picture, and there was a whole rule book on it. And so the name Blazy Susan just kind of came to mind, and it stuck with me for several years as just, hey, there's something that is out there that can clean up these messy coffee tables. And that's really where the brand started. So it was all about solving that problem of, there's the messy stoner that's self-aware, right? Hey, I need to clean up. There's also the messy stoner spouse, right? Which is the wife, the girlfriend, sometimes the other way. But we had a lot of people reaching out saying like, my husband needs this, or my boyfriend needs this. And so we really built the whole brand through Instagram. So we started with a literal sketch. You can go onto Reddit and look at our original post back in 2017, the tray, the logo, everything was actually, I say crowdsourced through this really innovative community, I think at the time in Colorado. 2014 and kind of through 2019, I would say, was this magical time in the cannabis industry where everyone was really converging in Colorado and coming here to learn. And so we just took that energy and I think we bottled it in the Blazy Susan brand. And so we started with this rolling tray, and we built it into all the other things you put on the rolling tray. So our biggest claim to fame, I think, is our pink rolling papers. Most people know us for. And that started as a high idea, where, I was sanding these trays, doing this in my garage back in 2017. And I was like, look, the trays are not going to cut it. As much as I loved it, I was like, look, you have to pivot. You have to think of other products. And so rolling papers was a great concept, but it was like, how do we make this authentic, and how do we actually resonate something in the community?
Yeah.
And for us, there wasn't really a pink paper on the market at the time. So we were able to find a pink paper. We sent 100 different envelopes out with like 2 stickers. I actually posted this on my LinkedIn the other day. There's like, 2 actual rolling papers, taking like 2 papers out of a booklet and shipping them out to 100 different people on Instagram that I'd never met.
Wow.
And everyone came back and said, this is a great product. And so for us, like, we had a great product, and then the messaging behind it was really important because my mother's a breast cancer survivor. And so for us, we had a really cool opportunity to build in this kind of social consciousness effort into the brand, and saying like, look, we can have fun. Blazy Students is a very fun brand. It's very, we like to say it's very approachable and inclusive. Like, it's literally a lazy Susan, so everyone can come around it in a lot of ways. So, we took that, and we started doing initiatives, give backs. Last year, we were able to give over 100,000 to charity across a bunch of different charities, including the Last Prisoner Project, 40 Tons, a couple different breast cancer charities, which is the Lynn Sage Foundation. We've been working with them for a long time. But ultimately, right, you can have fun, you can create great products for people, and you can also feel good about doing it. And so that's kind of been what's been so enjoyable about being at Blazy Susan and creating new products through this brand, is that the community really is looking for us to keep pushing and hey, what's next? So, we've just always been focused on the consumer, and so it's taken us a lot of really interesting places.
Yeah, that's great. I think in general, the whole story and kind of evolution is super interesting, because I do think it is a little bit of kind of a subversion of kind of the stereotypes of stoners. I think a lot of the time it's kind of like what you're saying, a bunch of guys hanging out in a messy apartment, smoking, not doing much, but kind of just hanging out. But I do think it can be one of those things, Lazy Susans, I think, are more antique. They've got kind of a vintage charm to them. So that sort of element, I think the pink oftentimes obviously associated with women who I know are big consumers in cannabis, and it's kind of underplayed. I think a lot of the time it's sort of the stoner bro is the idea. And then even like you're saying, sort of the supportive, health element, I think is super important, because I do think while people have known that cannabis can be helpful for going through things like cancer treatment and kind of having that health angle, I think it's something that is still important, and sort of, again, sort of clearing out those old stereotypes and kind of bringing forward what cannabis can be and kind of have a different angle there, which I think is really great.
Yeah. I think one of the coolest things, like touching on that, on the side of, looking at like how women impacted this brand, I've got so many DMs from the early days, and when it was like we were actually designing our logo, and there were people that just reached out and they identified so much with what we were doing that they were really genuinely being like, hey, look, I think you should do your logo like this, right? And everything, about her features to the color of her hair, right? There was an opinion on everything. And I think being in Colorado and kind of being at the head of this, right, as the founder, we were able to really kind of craft this great message with a lot of input from the community, and ultimately just kind of put the brand in the right position to feel like people have a brand that reflects their lifestyle or their choices, right? Because not everyone is into that shaggy do in life, right? And there's nothing against that either. I think we started the brand going after that crowd, right? Because when we built these big rolling trays, the people with $30,000 glass rigs, and people that were like, look, why would you buy this product? Well, you wouldn't want to have your dog knock over your really expensive bong, right? And so that was sort of the first value prop. And so we went after the connoisseurs with that tray product, and going to the papers really created something that everyone could try, because not everyone wants to buy $150 rolling tray, right? So creating something that everyone could have a piece of was really important, and how we rounded out the brand, and I think how we became successful.
Yeah. And I think I would imagine having that relationship with people who are buying your product and things like that is just important, to have that connection. I think that is ultimately at the heart of almost any brand, is having that relationship and that communication. I do think also in cannabis, there are a lot of people, like you're saying, who are very passionate about it, whether they're spending large on things like a bong or whatever, or are just kind of using it and really build a community in it. So I think that's great to be able to engage with that and reflect it. Has that changed at all, kind of going through? Because I feel like 2013, so long ago relatively now, 2017, so long ago relatively, from now. How have things changed in terms of, managing that relationship with people who engage with your brand and are really into it?
Yeah, so actually we've gotten a lot better at it. So there's been a lot of cool platforms. One that I want to shout out is a platform called Learn Brands. So we use Learn Brands, and they kind of go out and they actually teach courses on our products. And so through all these different bud tenders out there, we're able to kind of recruit their feedback, get them to educate themselves on the product, and in the same time also do product studies with them. So with like our most recent launch of these tea leaf blunts that we're doing that are actually made out of black tea, something that's never really been launched. And so we were again, we're kind of the guinea pig, and we love being the guinea pig, I think, in the industry, because ultimately people want something new. They want to try something that isn't out there, and they trust us, right? Like that brand trust and that consumer loyalty comes from them trusting us. And so we ultimately want to bring our A game, but we're also not too, we're not too full of ourselves to think that we know it all, right? And I think that's really important. No matter how big you get as a company, is accepting that, hey, look, you can have hunches and you can build data, but ultimately, if you're too afraid, I think also from like an entrepreneurial standpoint, is people that think they have everything figured out, but they never talk to anyone. And then they spend, it could be hundreds of dollars, $1,000, millions of dollars, but they don't have that actual exchange. And I think it's just missing out, right? I think the customer will generally tell you what they want, especially if it's something they care about. So for us, we've been able to really continue to scale that. And so we're launching all kinds of new product development studies. We actually just had a new product at MJ Biz. We're launching a cone filling machine called the Cone Pro 200, which is something to compete with the Knockbox and these other products that fill cones for dispensaries. And so we ventured into this whole, hey, why are you making machinery now? It's because we wanted to solve a problem, right? And so we had a lot of our customers reach out and say, hey, well, actually, this is the cool part, and I'll just go into a quick story about this. We did a licensing deal in Arizona with a company called The Mint, and so we did a charity pre-roll back this year for October. We did about 5,000 of these pre-rolls. And we gave, we licensed it. We didn't, because we're not plant touching. So for us, it's really important. We don't really take any money from direct plant touching. But when we have like a licensing style, hey, put our name on it, we'll promote it, and we're going to give it all back to charity. So we were able to raise over $10,000 for this Meals on Wheels program called the Joy Bus. And they go out and they drop off meals to cancer patients of all kinds. And throughout this process, we were actually just having issues getting people to roll the joints for us. Is that everyone's machines were broken, and then so my partner in Arizona was like scrambling to figure out how to roll joints, and so we kind of created this machine out of that need. And then as we started talking to more people, we realized that hey, a lot of people's machines are broken, be that a Futurola or whatever, and that's a very high cost to buy this equipment. And you can't fix it. And there's some issues that we saw, including like particulate being in the air, where we're like, people die at a Trulieve or these other MSOs because people are breathing in keef all day. And as someone that has actually been in a hemp farm and had to beat the crap out of a bunch of hemp stalks and get a bunch of dust in my lungs, I can tell you it's not enjoyable. So, that's one of those things. And we actually brought that prototype to MJ Biz. And so it wasn't fully done. We didn't even know the price of it yet. But we wanted to bring it and talk to actual producers and say, hey, what are your problems? What are you having problems with? And, does this prototype kind of fit these problems that you're having? And so we've had a lot of really good feedback, but to that point, we're never afraid to ask for help, never afraid to ask for feedback. And I think that's part of why we're such a great brand, is because it's not just me, it's everyone in the company, takes the approach of, we work for the consumer. And so no one knows all the answers, but if you ask enough people, generally they'll steer you in the right direction. And that's what happened with our packaging. Even for our pink rolling papers, it was hey, pick 1, 2, 3, or 4 on my Facebook and on my Instagram. And then, hey, everyone voted for this one. And that was my favorite. And so that's how we ended up with the pink checkers. Was like, hey, checkers was completely chosen by the people. And I think, looking at the sales numbers now and looking at how our brand's grown, it's like, wow, great job, guys. So
I guess you ask what people want and then they get what they want and it works. I mean, it's sort of a win-win-win-win-win, right? I think all across the board. So totally makes sense.
Right. Yeah, and I think there's a lot of great brands in the cannabis industry that do that as well, right? I mean, you look at everyone that's really customer focused. I feel like has been doing pretty well, and people that say, "Look, I'm going to stick to my consumers, stick to my market, stick to my lane, and really just focus on it." And I think that you look at a company like GTI, and you're like, "Okay, these guys are profitable. They didn't do any crazy, tangents. Stick to their core." And that will deliver results ultimately, because 5-6 years ago it was radical, but we've been doing it now almost 8 years. And so you really see what you can do in 8 years if you don't try to reach for too many things. And so for us, we're like the fastest growing brand in the whole world, I'd say, in rolling papers. So when it comes to like finding that lane and sticking to it, I think that we've done really well at just staying, focused there and focusing on that ancillary side of the business.
Yeah, for sure. And I'll definitely say we'll talk a little bit more about distribution in a second, but definitely see you guys, and you guys jump off the shelves pretty much anywhere that I see you guys, because the coloring and the interesting packaging and all that stuff. I did want to talk a little bit more about the cone filling machines, just because that's super interesting. And I do think that there's such a hunger for automation, kind of getting solutions for those kinds of things. So it's interesting to kind of have your finger on the pulse of problems and just try to get your arms around it and solve it. So it sounds like you're not currently, or would not currently be working with kind of those larger companies on something like that, but just sort of because of the plant touching element. Would that be potentially something that you would, if things changed and that, the laws changed, maybe rescheduling, descheduling, something crazy in the future, would that be something that you would be interested in, or no?
Yeah, I mean, I think we've always been we've approached the brand as we're building the world's largest cannabis brand in reverse, where we're not going to touch the plant until the last second, and continue to build our reputation in the industry in these other channels, right? It's like, hey, why would you sell a Blazy Susan cannabis product? Well, hey, we're building signage for stores. We're building the product displays, the merchandising. We're giving retailers another avenue of revenue, and we're helping them on the production side. So ultimately we're building, I like to say, a lot of good karma and industry points as a brand, saying like, look, if we're going to do something, we're going to do it right, and we're going to make sure that it actually goes well, because we're mostly distribution focused. We don't make money unless our customers make money. And so it's this very, we have this very obsessive mindset about, hey, if our product isn't moving, it's not the distributor's fault, and it's not the retailer's fault. It's all our fault. And so, taking that approach has really like made our partners very comfortable with working with us, and also like accepting that, hey, if Blazy might launch this new product or take this risk, generally they trust us doing that. So I think the plant touching is definitely exciting. We've always looked at a licensing model, to be honest. I've been in enough grows, and very limited on that side, but have a lot of great friends in the industry. And so, you can license with a good partner. That's great. The other side of that is that usually people that have good weed don't need help selling it. And so they're not necessarily looking for a license. So that's kind of what we've seen is like, hey, we don't want to rush into a license with the wrong partner. But we see, ultimately anything in charity. I think that's been our biggest wins is doing these cannabis products for charity. So we just partnered with another company called Dialed in Gummies. That's a Colorado brand. I think they're going into a couple other states, Ohio, Missouri. But we did a pink gummy tin, right? And hey, we're giving back towards breast cancer. A lot of people on their organization have been impacted. So I think it's one of those things where it's, we want to have that fun element and make it pink and make it exciting, but we have to have it with a higher message. And that ultimately kind of builds the brand for us, right? It's like, look, everyone could sell a gummy, but why are we doing it? And I think that's how we approach the space, is that, building that karma, that reputation in the industry is so important. And we're not in a rush, right? I think federal legalization, who knows when that's going to happen, but ultimately when that stage is set, we will have a brand that's not just in the US or in one state. We're going to have a brand that's international. And so that's really our higher level strategy, is build the cannabis brand in reverse.
That makes sense. Which you guys are already international. How many countries are you guys in currently? A ton, right?
So I would say we're in over 50 countries. We're all the way out in like tiny islands, like all the way out in the middle of the Pacific.
Sure.
like Granada and
Yeah.
there's honestly too many to count, but I think the big ones is, we're in the UK. That's been a bigger market for us in Europe. And that's kind of spread into the rest of Europe and from the UK. South Africa, we've started working with some great distributors in Chile, Argentina, and we've had a really long lasting, I would say, distribution partner in Mexico for the entire country. So if you ever go to Mexico and you're ever on one of those, if you ever go into town from the beach resorts, you'll see our products everywhere in all those smoke shops because we've had such an amazing partner. They actually distribute Vans and Timberland. So they came from the shoe and merchandising industry, and they were like, well, we want to get into weed and we want to use Blazy as our first brand that we're going to take. So they actually had a showroom before I did back in 2019. They built a whole showroom in Mexico, and it's based in Guadalajara. So, we've really just had a lot of great partners that we found, and people that just ultimately believe in the brand. I think that's the biggest part. That we've really not. We haven't like rushed out to find distribution partners. We've been very like inbound, like, hey, if you like our brand, like talk to us and we will, have a conversation. And usually people have been so passionate and they're like, we really want Blazy. We want to take care of it, treat it like our own brand. And, those have been the people that have helped us succeed.
That's awesome. Well, I definitely think having those open lines of communication and being willing to kind of have those conversations pretty easily makes for those good relationships when you come across them, which is great. Awesome. All right. I'm going to be traveling eventually soon, and I'm going to keep an eye out because I feel like it'll be easy to spot, and that would be kind of fun to do kind of, can you spot it around the world? Or if anyone's traveling for the holidays or anything like that, definitely take a picture and maybe tag me and tag Will. It'd be cool to see. So I know, across the world, I think is a big thing. I know we mentioned across the internet, I'm sure with, getting distribution through social media, through your website, all those different things. I know you guys also have merch and all of that, which kind of reinforces the brand. What are sort of the expectations for growing on that side of things, on sort of the internet side of things?
Yeah. So I think one of the coolest, I would say like the generally the biggest catalyst for growth that we've seen has really been from the convenience side. So this, I want to say last month we just had our first conversation with 7-Eleven on a national level, which is sort of like, as a founder, I'm like, wow, this is my, the ink's there's no ink dry, so I'm not gonna like jinx it here, but they approached us and they're like, hey, we want to launch in a couple states. We're going to demo you guys. And so for us, this is like the floodgate, because as the industry, coming from like, hey, what does a market look like in accessories and ancillaries? So anyone watching this, it's like, hey, I want to start a cannabis ancillary brand, where do you sell? And so, there's a lot in the smoke shop space. That's where we've done really well. I think we've built most of our revenue in that kind of alternative vape smoke shop kind of market. Then you have the dispensary market. But in rolling papers, the convenience store market is like, I don't know. So all of our biggest competitors, like 80 or 90% of their business is actually in convenience and not in these other markets. So for us, we're kind of breaking into the big dollars, and ultimately, taking market share from companies that are, 10, I don't know, Howell's Zag, they were in the 1800s, I believe. They're early 1900s. OCB, again, a very old legacy brand. And so for us, we're just really happy to be here. I think just being in the same conversation as these brands is an honor, to be honest. And I think, that's really where we see the growth. And then from the brand side, we're also starting to work with a company called Zoomies, which is a big 700 plus retailer in malls. So they want to launch T-shirts and apparel, and so seeing the brand kind of go in all these different directions at once is really cool. So ultimately, we're building hype. We're doing limited merch. We're doing collaborations with different artists. We were just at Lil Wayne's Louisiana Festival. We did a very limited run of rolling papers for that, and so we're getting these approvals from these very high level artists, managers, and we would attribute that really to our presence off the trade show circuit, which is typically where we've seen each other at the trade shows. But what we do behind the scenes, especially in Colorado, I think is a very interesting part of how we've built our brand, which is going into the green rooms, going into the backstages with a lot of artists, and ultimately just kind of being that hospitality provider and saying, look, you're in Colorado, it's a legal state. We've got great partners, on all the product side. So people want to come to Colorado, their green room needs things. And so we typically are there delivering it. And my business partner, Trey, has done an amazing job of networking and building these relationships. So right now we're actually doing an experiential house in Miami for Art Basel and then Rolling Loud, which is for, artists, managers, networking on a high level, kind of invite only. So if you're in Miami and you want to do some high level networking, hit me up. But that's kind of where we've built things on the backside, because I think culture is such an important part of building a rolling paper brand, because everyone is generally buying their paper from the same factories, right? There's only 4 factories you buy paper from. And so what makes you different? Usually it's not the paper, right? It's not a product thing. And so that's a very interesting differentiator when you talk about like a cannabis product, because it's like, hey, look, here's my testing, here's my terpenes, right? You can very objectively, judge that product. And so that's really how we see the culture war, so to say, is like, how do we be in that forefront of, hey, what are artists using? What's music doing? Art, rap, all these different segments that influence cannabis culture very heavily. That's where we try to have our hands in the backs and pulling some strings there.
That's fantastic. I definitely think obviously cannabis and music go so well together, but I do think it is, like you're saying, kind of that lifestyle, that cultural element. I know we've seen some cannabis companies outside of just offering cannabis itself. They're trying to have, community days where they're doing stuff, or concerts where they're hanging out together. So it's sort of building out that brand rather than, like you're saying, just the product itself, sort of everything around it and kind of how it influences and relates to wider culture, which is so cool. It totally makes sense. And I guess also I forgot to mention your Grateful Dead collab that you had also. So again, classic cannabis, classic, which is really, really great. All right. Well, awesome. I think we are getting close on time. I did want to mention, of course, just because we are coming up on the holidays. One, do you guys have any big impacts from sort of the Green Wednesday or coming into kind of Christmas and the winter holidays? Any impacts there? And then also, people are probably doing their last minute shopping. If you have to pick one thing or 2 things to give to a friend that uses cannabis, what would you pick?
Yeah, so I think we've seen a definite uptick in November. We did have a slow Q3. I don't know if the rest of the industry felt that. I think generally the economy, right, like the consumers have been squeezed this year, and so we use Hoodie Analytics. Shout out to them. But we track all of our accessories data, so we've seen the industry, at least in dispensary, accessories have been down. I would say that certain cannabis products are also down, but we've seen a nice rebound into the end of the year, and so we're excited about that. And ultimately, I think there was a lot of I think in our space as well, kind of looking at the alternative market, there's a lot of hesitancy with the new administration saying like, hey, look, most of these distributors that we sell to are selling like, the Delta 9 compliant hemp products, and they've got tens of millions of dollars. And so they're like, what do we do? What's going to change? And so sometimes people freeze up. And I think that's generally a reaction before a big election anyways, like, hey, let's not spend all our money before we know what's going on. And now that things are over, we'll see people just need to play the cards they're dealt. And so I think people are putting capital back into the market, into the business, wherever it's going to be. So I'm excited to kind of see what happens next year, especially with the Farm Bill. I know that's such a big impact for our core market. Most of the revenue from these smoke shops is coming from hemp products and from vape products, kratom, right? All these things that are typically kind of frowned on. And so, that's really exciting to see and see it pick back up. As far as the products, one of the things that we've launched is actually, I don't have one here, but I've got a great product. We just did a licensing deal with them. They're called Azuna. And Azuna is one of the fastest growing air freshener brands in the market, but they're different from like a candle, where they're actually using a tea tree oil base. And so instead of actually like burning something, believe it or not, candles actually make your indoor air quality worse. You're burning and you're adding all these PFAs or whatever is in the candle. And so this is more like an absorption product. And so it's really great for smoke. So if you've got a stoner that maybe they stink a little bit, or they, hey, look, your car, it works in a car too. You put it in your car. So we launched a limited collaboration with them called Flower Power, which is a little bit stronger to make sure you can kind of get all those smells out. But that would be a great stocking stuffer for people this year. Also a new grinder. I think grinders are very underrated if you're a flower user, because generally they get gummy. And if you've got a great grinder, we also sell a bong cleaner. So it'll clean aluminum, glass, whatever. So sometimes, just giving the gift of a clean new, hey, clean your this, clean your that, maybe a subtle, hey, you could maybe use a little more of this. But that's what we're here for, is we make it fun and say, look, you can clean stuff now. Here you go. Hey, you can smell, you don't have to smell as bad. Look, and it's fine, right? So, that's what I would recommend is something that, can make everyone else's life easier. And so, yeah.
Help people in a fun way, have them kind of cover the entire experience and make it better ultimately is the goal. If that makes sense. All right. Well, thanks so much for joining. Where can people stay in touch, stay in tune, keep an eye on everything that's going on with Lazy Susan before we wrap up?
Yeah. So I would say the best place is probably our website. We've got an email list, blazysusan.com. And also I'm on LinkedIn. So anyone that wants to reach out, feel free to connect with me directly, and Instagram as well. Lazy Susan. We own it all. So yeah. So thank you so much, Mackenzie, for the time. It was a pleasure being here.
Always great to hang out. Thanks for sharing your insight. Really, really appreciate it. And hopefully we'll have you on pretty soon. Thanks so much. We'll catch you guys later. Thanks.
Take care.
Before investing, carefully consider the investment objectives, risks, charges, and expenses found in the prospectus, available at AdvisorShares.com.